When I picked up the phone to ask my son Max when his wedding would be, my fiancée Lena looked me straight in the eye and said with a cold smile, "Oh, we got married yesterday. We only invited special people." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Special people. I had paid their $500 a month rent for 3 years, bought every piece of furniture in their house, and stocked their refrigerators when they had nothing to eat. I was not special. I stood in the living room of my own house, my phone weighing 1,000 pounds, and watched my son avoid my gaze as Lena made herself comfortable on the couch I had bought for them. The pale pink dress I had chosen for her wedding hung uselessly in my closet, along with new shoes and the illusion of being a part of the most important day of my only son's life. I had spent $200 on that dress, thinking about how beautiful I would look in Max's wedding photos I would never see. I had planned every detail for weeks. I had saved up $1,000 for them as a wedding present. I had called my sister Diana in Chicago to tell her the good news. I had cleaned the house from top to bottom, thinking they would celebrate with me after the ceremony. It all came crashing down in a split second with those 4 poisonous words, "Only special people." Max finally looked up and said in a practiced voice, "Mom, it was intimate, very small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses." But I knew it was a lie. I saw the photos on social media. I saw Lena's parents posing proudly with the bride and groom. I saw her siblings toasting her with champagne. I saw Lena's white dress, which I had helped finance with the $800 I had given her for personal expenses last month. I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see. A week later, exactly 7 days after that insult, Lena called me with a completely different voice. She was no longer the confident woman who had shut me out of the wedding. Now she was desperate, almost pleading. "Renate, the rent is late. The landlord is pressuring us, saying, if we don't pay this week, they'll kick us out. You forgot to do the transfer." His voice trembled a little, as if the world were ending. I paused for a few seconds, remembering all the times I'd run to the bank to do that transfer. I'd always canceled my plans to make sure they had a roof over their heads. I'd always eaten beans and rice so I could pay for their needs. And now, after excluding me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the audacity to call me as if nothing had happened. "Lena," I said with a calmness that surprised even me, "did I warn you that I only help special people?" The silence on the other end of the line was so deep that I could hear my heart beating. For the first time in years, it wasn't me who was shaking, it was him. "Renate, I don't understand," he stammered. "We were always special to you. You're like a second mother to me." Lies, all lies. She only used that sweet voice she used when she needed something. The same voice she used to ask me for money for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the rings, the ceremony I helped finance without knowing I would never see her exchange. For years, I had lived this feeling of walking on eggshells, weighing every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping to get a crumb of love from my own son. I was the perfect mother, the obedient mother-in-law, the silent provider who never complained when I was treated like I didn't exist. But that phrase, "only special people," awakened something long dormant in me. I had calculated in my head how much I had spent on them in those 3 years. Between rent, food, gifts, emergencies, and whims, it was over $20,000. I had taken $20,000 from my retirement, my savings, and the money my late husband had left me to live out my last years in comfort. And what was all this for? To act like a stranger on my own son's wedding day. That night, after I hung up the phone, I sat on my bed and cried, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger, of accumulated disappointment, of years of silently enduring humiliation. I cried because they made me feel like my love was a burden, my existence an obstacle, that all I had to offer was money. I tried to be indispensable to the foolish mother I was, to the woman who had lost herself, to those who thought she was irreplaceable. When I woke up in the morning, something had changed inside me. It wasn't just the pain of betrayal. It was something deeper, colder. I stood up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes as always, the same wrinkles that told the tale of years of unrequited love. But there was something else in my gaze, a hardness I didn't recognize, a determination hidden beneath years of obedience. As I had every morning for 40 years, I went into the kitchen and made coffee. But this time I didn't think to call Max and ask how he slept. I didn't look at my phone, waiting for a text message apologizing for the insult I'd given him the day before. For the first time in a long time, this was my first worry of the day. I sat at the table where I often planned surprises for them, counted the bills for their expenses, and cried silently when they ignored me. Now this table would be a witness to something else entirely. I took out my checkbook and bank statements and started calculating. I wanted to see the extent of my stupidity in concrete numbers. The $500 monthly rent, multiplied by 36 months, was $18,000. Food and supplies, about $200 a month, were another $7,200. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, anniversary gifts, at least $3,000. Lena's emergency medical care, $800. They never paid me back the car loan, $2,500. Air conditioning repair in their apartment, $600. Living room furniture, $1,200. $33,400. That was the exact sum of my generosity. I squandered $33,400 from my husband's inheritance, my pension, and the savings I had saved for decades of honest work. All that money was thrown out the window to keep 2 elderly men comfortable who could not claim to respect me. The phone rang and I saw Max's name on the screen. Normally, I would have rushed to answer it, hoping he would finally apologize and explain that it was all a misunderstanding, but this time I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally, it fell silent and I continued drinking my coffee as if nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was Lena. I let it ring. Then a text came from Max. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted the message without answering. I decided to go for a walk at 2:00 in the afternoon. I hadn't done this in months without a specific goal, without a task related to them. It had always been the bank for money transfers, the supermarket for what they needed, the pharmacy for Lena's medicine. Today I went for a walk just because I wanted to. I walked past the park where I often took Max as a child. I remembered that sweet boy who hugged me tightly and told me I was the best mother in the world. When did he become this man who treated me like an ATM with feelings? When did I start confusing love with money? When did I start believing that I should receive my own son's love? I stood in front of the door at the bank where I often made automatic transfers. The branch manager, Mr. Klein, saw me through the glass and waved. I had known him for years. He had processed every transfer I had made to Max and Lena. He watched my account empty month after month to top up theirs. I went inside and went straight to his office. "Mr. Klein," I told him that I needed to cancel the automatic transfers I had programmed. She looked at me in surprise. For 3 years, these transfers had been as regular as sunrise. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Something happened?" Her concern was more genuine than Max's interest in me in recent months. What happened was that I finally opened my eyes and answered. "I want to cancel everything and also want information on how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money." While Mr. Klein was processing the cancellations, my phone kept ringing. Max, Lena, Max again. It was as if they had developed a radar to detect when a source of income was in danger. I turned off the phone completely. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Klein said as he handed me the documents. "I'm sorry to intrude, but I've seen you've been very generous to your family over the years. I hope you are not being pressured to make these changes." His words touched me deeply. This man who barely knew me outside of banking cared more about my well-being than my own son. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Klein. On the contrary, I finally stopped pressuring myself. When I left the bank, I felt as if I had been slightly burned. For years, my money had been completely mine. When I got home, I found 3 cars parked in front of my door. Max's and Lena's and one I didn't recognize. I could see movement through the windows inside my house. My blood ran cold. They had keys. I gave them the keys because I trusted them, because I thought that one day they would take care of me as I had taken care of them. I took a deep breath before opening the door. It was time for the first real confrontation of my new life. I opened the door to my house and saw a sight I will never forget. Lena sitting on the couch, pacing back and forth like a caged animal, and her voice was already audible on the phone. "Thank God about your situation. Mom, we went to the bank and Mr. Klein explained that you had blocked access to your accounts. I was concerned about your mental well-being and I didn't shake his hand. I collected the documents he had looked at without my permission. Lately, you haven't been answering our calls. We know that when he needs something, he's more worried than you." It went off like an alarm bell in my head. This wasn't about helping me. The woman who told me they only invited special people was tougher than I've been in years. "Indeed, you're going to leave my house now," Mr. Fisher interrupted with the kind of word that professional lawyers use when they want to sound reasonable. "Ms. Richter, I understand that you feel overwhelmed, but your children have the right to intervene if they believe that your ability to make financial decisions is impaired. They have documented several laughable behaviors related to my father. Cruel who decides that my money belongs to me. Stop financing the lives of 2 adults who treat me like trash." Lena jumped as if I had hit her. "We never treated you badly. You are part of your family. Everything you have will one day belong to us. We are just speeding up the process." There was the naked, unvarnished truth. Everything I have lived for one day belongs to them. In their minds, I was already dead and they were just collecting their inheritance in advance. It didn't matter if I had 70 years or 70 days left. To them, I was just an ATM with broken legs. "I'll take it out," I said, pointing to the door. "All 3 of you get out of my house." Max stood up with the look on his face like an angry child he does when he doesn't get his way. "Mom, we can't just leave. We have obligations. Rent, you can't get past a day that I have a voice portfolio and we put it on my desk. We made a power of attorney that could make this transition easier so that Max and Lena can better manage your finances." They were tears of sadness. "You can't do this to us. We didn't believe in money because we took your financial debt." Now that I had decided that my money was being put to better use in my own life, Max suddenly tried to approach me, but he wasn't the guy who had been in my arms when I had nightmares. He had to feel remorse. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was upset. I was under pressure. "If you were reasonable again, we could fix this." Reasonable, the word tasted bitter in my mouth. Being reasonable means continuing to pay for your life while you treated me like a stranger. It means pretending that I wouldn't be harmed by being left out of the most important day of my only son's life. Mr. Fisher filled out the paperwork with the efficiency of someone accustomed to being rejected. "Mrs. Richter, this is not over. Your family has legal options. If you are truly making irrational decisions due to mental health issues, a judge could determine that you need guardianship. His words were like a blow. I realized that this wasn't just a manipulative family visit. This was a real legal threat. I was being forced to manage my own affairs. They wanted to declare me incompetent. Mr. Fisher, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I suggest you do your research before you threaten a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances flawlessly for 40 years, raised her son alone after her husband died, farmed and worked honorably until her retirement, and until last week supported two fully capable elderly people. Lena stopped crying and finally looked at me with the coolness that showed her true colors. This won't last, Renati. We have rights and lawyers too. Perfect, I replied. Hire all the lawyers you want. Of course with your own money, because my money is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums. All three of them walked towards the door with the wounded dignity of people who are not used to saying no. Before they left, Max turned to me one last time. Mom, this is going to end badly for you. You'll be left alone with no one to take care of you when you really need it. Max, I am deeply saddened, both I said with crystal clarity. I am alone now. The difference is that now it is not because of your neglect, but by my own choice. As I closed the door behind them, I stood in my living room, surrounded by the most beautiful silence I have heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. I could not sleep that night, but not from sadness or regret, but from the adrenaline of taking control of my life again. I lay awake in bed, planning my next steps like a general preparing for battle. If Max and Lena wanted to fight, I would give them a war. But this would be a war I would fight with intelligence, not emotion. By 6:00 in the morning, I was dressed and ready to go. My first stop was the lawyer, Mr. Weber, a man I had met years ago when I was executing my husband's will. Unlike Mr. Fisher, whom Max and Lena had brought with them, Mr. Weber had an impeccable reputation and specialized in defending the rights of the elderly. Mrs. RTOR. As I explained the situation, he told me, what your kids tried to do yesterday is more common than you think. It's called elder abuse and it's a federal crime. It's also a crime for them to go into your home without your permission and look through your personal files. His words both reassured and worried me. They reassured me because they confirmed that I wasn't crazy, that what was happening was truly abusive. They worried me because I realized that the situation was more serious than I thought. We have to document everything, Mr. Weber continued. Every transfer, every gift, every time they pressure you for money. We will also amend your will to protect your assets from future manipulation. We spent 3 hours reviewing my financial records. Mr. Weber blew his whistle when he saw the total of $33,400 over 3 years. Ms. Richter, with that money, you could have lived comfortably, traveled, and retired. Instead, you completely funded the lives of 2 elderly people who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their weddings. When I left Mr. Weber's office, I had a complete plan. First, I would change all the locks on my house. Second, I would install a security camera system to protect myself from future surprise visits. Third, I would open a new bank account with a different bank that they were not affiliated with. Fourth, I would start living the life I had been putting off for years. My next stop was a hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summer, had known me for years because I always bought things to fix up Max and Lena's apartment. This time was different. Ms. RTOR, what brings you here today? Another emergency with your son? My wasted asked the acquaintance of a man who had silently witnessed my generosity. No, Mr. Summer, this time it's for my own house. I need to change all the locks and I want them to be the best quality. He looked at me with surprise but didn't ask. While I was choosing the locks, his son Ethan, who installs security systems, came over. It was Providence in action. Ethan, I told him I also needed to install surveillance cameras, a complete system. Price was no problem. The next day, as I was getting everything ready for installation, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Lena calling from someone else's phone because I had blocked her number after the confrontation the day before. Renata, this is Lena. Please don't hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults. Speak up, I said dryly. Listen, I understand that you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I talked about it and we want to make it up to you. How about our special dinner to celebrate our wedding? We can do it at your place. Cook together like before. In his words, the manipulation was so obvious that I almost had to laugh. Lena, how much rent do you owe exactly? The silence on the other end confirmed that I had gotten on my nerves. Yes, for 2 months, $1,000 in total, but I'm not just calling you for that, Renati. We miss you so much in our lives. Do you miss me or my money? I asked directly. Both, she answered with surprising honesty. Renati, I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, we need your financial help, but we love you too. You're important to us. If I'm so important, I said, why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why wasn't I important enough to receive a call that didn't charge a fee? When was the last time you called me and asked how I was? Another silence. We both knew the answer. Never. Lena, I'm only going to explain this to you once. For 3 years, you've been treating me like an ATM with emotion. You've used me, you ignored me, you humiliated me, and finally you insulted me in the worst way. Now that you're running out of money, you suddenly realize you love me. Please note, I interrupted him. Please don't. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough to be at your wedding. Now I'm fixing myself. I hung up the phone and turned it off completely. I didn't want any more interruptions on my day of salvation. That afternoon, I went to a beauty salon I hadn't been to in over a year. I always canceled my appointments because Max or Lena needed something urgent, or because the money I had set aside for myself was urgent for them. Mrs. Richter, my favorite hairstylist, Cynthia called. What a surprise. I thought you'd forgotten about us. I haven't forgotten about you, Cynthia. I just forgot that I deserve to be pampered too. I treated myself to the full cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money without feeling guilty. Cynthia, as she worked on my hair, she told me about her life, her children, her dreams. It was refreshing to have a conversation that didn't revolve around Max and Lena's needs. You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter, she said when she was done. But you look so much freer than that. Did something good happen? Yes, Cynthia. I had finally learned to say no. When I got home that afternoon, a car I didn't recognize was parked in front of my door. For a moment my heart skipped a beat. I thought Max and Lena might be coming back with boosters, but as I got closer I saw the old woman sitting on my porch steps. Mrs. Richter, she asked as I got out of the car. Yes, it's me. Can I help you? I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We've been neighbors for years, but we've never had a chance to talk. I heard some very loud noises at your house yesterday and I was worried. Is everything okay? Her genuine concern touched me deeply. Here was a stranger who was more interested in my well-being than my own son. Come on, Mrs. Brooks, I'll buy you coffee. I'll make you a cup of coffee and tell you a story you won't believe. I told her the whole story while I made her coffee. Eleanor listened intently, nodding her head occasionally. When I finished my story, her eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Richter, she said, you're right. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I felt it was my duty to finance her adult life. I also believed that they wouldn't love me if I didn't give them money. What happened? When I realized that they only called me when they needed something, I cut off the money. At first it was terrible. They threatened me, emotionally blackmailed me, tried to make me feel guilty. But after 6 months my daughter called and sincerely apologized. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not money. Her words gave me hope and confirmed that I had made the right decision. Do you think Max and Lena will understand one day? Maybe yes, maybe no, she answered sincerely. But it's no longer your responsibility, Mrs. Richter. Now it's your responsibility to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about whether Max and Lena had money for rent, food, or their own whims. I went to bed thinking about myself, my plans, my future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Etkin had changed. While the locks and security system were being installed, my phone still wouldn't try to ring from different phones, but it had developed a skill that didn't suit me. Permission, a police alert was sent. I was installing a security system to protect my own son. But it was a practical measure to preserve my newfound peace of mind, because we were always telling him about Ugger, how much I was spending on them, how hard I was working to help them. I realized now that our conversations had become financial reports disguised as family news. Renee, Diana answered, surprised. Sister, how are you? We haven't spoken in months. I'm fine, Diana, better than fine. I'm calling to tell you that I've finally come to my senses. I told her the whole story. The secret wedding at the beginning, the meeting with the lawyer, the decision to interrupt me, Renee hearing how much money she gave me as if I wanted something to be like. I never saw her at family gatherings, my mother didn't help me, or I didn't like my mother, as if you were a servant. You know, what else did I care about? When Renee is no longer here, we can fix up her house, or when she inherits, we can invest in the business. It's like they were really waiting for you to die in order to live. This revelation hit me like a bucket of ice water. They didn't just see me as an ATM. They saw me as a temporary barrier between themselves and their money. While I was trying to make them happy, they were planning their future without me. After talking to Diana, I sat in my kitchen and processed all this information. Years of marriage to a man who truly loved me, 35 years of raising my son alone after my husband died, and 3 years of supporting 2 elderly people who saw me as a $100,000 obstacle. The doorbell rang, and I saw on the new cameras that it was Eleanor with a cup in her hand. I opened the door and she handed me a freshly brewed coffee. After everything you said to me yesterday, I thought you might need some company, she said with a genuine smile that I already appreciated. We sat in my living room and Eleanor told me more about her experience. My daughter told me what Lena told you. You're like a second mother to me. We're special to you. One day everything will be ours. These are rehearsed phrases, Mrs. Richter. They learn these things from an emotional manipulation playbook. Do you think there's such a playbook? I asked half jokingly, but it seems like the official playbook. She feels indispensable. In the second chapter, constant financial emergencies are created. In the third chapter, when she's resistant, she questions her sanity. We laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. It was both funny and tragic to recognize such predictable patterns in our own children's behavior. Did you ever feel guilty about cutting money? I asked Eleanor. Every day for the first 3 months, she answered honestly. But then I started to see results. My daughter stopped playing golf every weekend, and more importantly, she learned that I was a person because I always needed something. One of their emergencies, Robert's grave, looked a little neglected. Because I sat on the lawn by his headstone and talked to him, Robert. After you left, I lost myself for a while. In the process, I forgot to be myself. The wind blew gently, and for a moment I felt like he was listening to me. Our son has become someone I don't recognize, or maybe he was always like this and I didn't want to see it. His wife is well, you know how she is. The money you left for me to live peacefully, I spent it taking care of them. But not anymore, my love. I have learned. I cleaned his grave, replaced the withered flowers with new ones, and stayed there for another hour, simply enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I was not in a hurry to go home to solve a crisis for Max and Lena. When I got home, there were 3 cars parked in front of my door again. My heart raced, but this time I was prepared. The cameras showed me that it was Max, Lena, and 2 others, people I didn't recognize. Everyone seemed agitated, talking to each other and pointing at my house. I didn't get out of the car. Instead, I called Mr. Weber, my lawyer. Mr. Weber, they are at my house again. This time they've brought more people. What should I do? Don't get out of the car, Mrs. Richter. I'll be there right away and I'll call the police. After our conversation yesterday, I requested a temporary restraining order. They are not allowed to be on your property. Minutes later, Mr. Weber and 2 police patrol cars arrived. I watched the officers talk to Max and Lena. Saw my son gesticulate angrily. Saw Lena crying again, but this time her tears did not move me. One of the officers approached my car. Ma'am, you can get out safely. Your visitors are going to leave immediately. As I got out of the car, Max shouted at me from the street. Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son, Max, I replied with a calm that surprised even me. Family doesn't threaten lawsuits for mental incompetence. Family doesn't break into people's homes without permission. Family doesn't treat their mothers like ATMs. Lena screamed from across the street, you're going to pay us everything you owe us. We have bills you co-signed for. You can't just abandon us like this, Mr. Weber interjected. Mrs. Brooks, any future communication must be through my office, and I suggest you consult with an attorney before making collection threats because my client has full documentation of all the payments she voluntarily made for 3 years. I watched them drive away in their cars, defeated but not giving up. I knew this wasn't over, but for the first time in this situation, I felt confident. I had professional help. I had emotional support from a leaner. And more importantly, I had mental clarity about what was right and what was wrong. That night, Alina invited me to her house for dinner. I met her daughter who was visiting, and I was able to see with my own eyes what a healthy family relationship looked like. They spoke respectfully to each other, asked sincerely about each other's lives, and laughed together. The daughter didn't ask for money once the entire evening. I wanted that with Max too, I confessed to Eleanor after her daughter had left. Maybe you'll get it one day, she replied. But first he has to learn that you are a person who deserves respect, not just a source of income. For the first time in weeks, I went to bed feeling hopeful about the future. The next few days were strangely peaceful. The surveillance cameras showed me that Max and Lena were driving past my house several times a day, sometimes slowly, sometimes they parked for a few minutes but without getting out. It was as if they were studying my routine, looking for the perfect moment for their next move. Mr. Weber had advised me to document every one of these visits, so I kept a detailed log with the date and time. Their persistence will work in our favor, he had said. Every time they show up after we've told them not to approach, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order. On Friday morning, I was calmly having breakfast when the doorbell rang. The cameras showed me a very well-dressed young woman with a folder in her hands and a professional smile. I didn't recognize her, but something about her posture told me it was not a social visit. Good morning, Mrs. Renati Richter, she said as I opened the door. I am a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We have received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation and we need to conduct a wellness check. My blood ran cold. Max and Lena had escalated the situation. It was no longer just threats from private lawyers. Now they had involved the government. Can I see your ID? I asked, trying to stay calm. Of course, she showed me an official ID that looked genuine. I am social worker Mrs. Schmidt. Can I come in and talk to you? I let her in, knowing that a refusal would have been worse for my case. Mrs. Schmidt sat down in my living room and took a form out of her folder. Mrs. Richter, we have received reports that you have shown significant changes in your financial behavior, that you have cut off communication with your family, and that you have shown signs of paranoia by installing unnecessary security systems. We were also told that you have refused medical and legal help from your love. At once, every word had been carefully chosen to make me sound like a mentally disturbed old woman. I recognized Lena's handwriting in the wording. She had always been skilled at manipulating words to get what she wanted. Miss Schmidt, I said with all the dignity I could muster, I would like to call my lawyer before answering any questions. Ma'am, this is not a legal interrogation. It's a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, it should not be a problem to speak with me. The phrase, if you have nothing to hide, infuriated me. It was the same logic abusers used to justify their invasions. If you're innocent, you shouldn't complain about your privacy being violated. Miss, I'm calling my lawyer. You can wait here or come back another day, but I will not answer any questions without legal representation present. I called Mr. Weber and he was there within 20 minutes. When he came in and saw the social worker, his expression hardened. Miss Schmidt, he said after checking her ID, I hope you have a court order to be here because my client is under my legal representation and any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment. Sir, Mrs. Schmidt replied with less confidence than before. We have reports from concerned family members about the lady's well-being. It's our duty to investigate. What family? Mr. Weber asked dryly. The same family that tried to get her to sign a power of attorney without representation. The same family that broke into her house without permission and checked her private documents. The the same family that excluded her from important events while living off her money. Mr. Weber took a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. Here I have complete documentation of my client's financial and emotional abuse. $33,400 that were withdrawn from her accounts in 3 years. Systematic social exclusion and emotional blackmail. If someone needs to be investigated here, it is not my client. Mrs. Schmidt reviewed the documents with growing discomfort. It was obvious that the information she had been given did not match the reality she had in front of her. Mrs. Artor, she said finally, can you explain to me why you so abruptly stopped financial support for your son? Because I finally discovered they were using me, I replied simply. Because I realized that to them I wasn't a mother but a bank account. Because I was tired of financing the lives of people who saw me as an obstacle. But don't you feel it's your responsibility to help your family? The question outraged me, Miss Schmidt. My responsibility as a mother was to raise my son until he was 18, to educate him, and to give him the tools to be an independent adult. My son is 35 years old, married, and perfectly capable of supporting himself. Financing his adult life is not my responsibility. It is my choice, and I have chosen not to do so anymore. Mr. Weber interjected. Miss Schmidt, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old adult to be unable to pay his own rent without the help of his 71-year-old mother? Mrs. Schmidt did not answer right away. I could see she was reevaluating the entire situation. Mrs. Richter, she asked after a moment, do you manage your own finances completely? I can show you my bank statements, my investments, my tax payments. Everything is current and in order. Do you live independently? As you can see, I keep my house clean. I take care of myself physically. I drive my own car. I have healthy social relationships with my neighbors. Do you take any medication? Just vitamins and occasionally aspirin. I don't have any medical conditions that require medication. Mr. Weber added, my client has just undergone extensive medical exams as part of our legal process. She is in perfect mental and physical condition. Mrs. Schmidt closed her folder inside. Mrs. Richter, based on this conversation and the documentation I have reviewed, I see no indication that you are at risk or in need of intervention. I will close this case. After she left, Mr. Weber and I remained silent for a few minutes. Renat, he said finally, this is going to continue to escalate. Max and Lena are spending money they don't have to hire professionals to try to have you declared incompetent. Does that mean they're desperate? It means that exactly. What else can they do? They can file a lawsuit for incompetence. It's expensive and hard to win. But if they find a sympathetic judge and a psychiatrist willing to testify in their favor, they could get a guardian assigned. The thought terrified me. They could take control of my money. They could try, but we have solid evidence that you are completely competent and that they are motivated by greed and not by genuine concern. That afternoon, I called Diana to vent. Sister, she said after hearing my story, do you notice how far they are willing to go for money? They are risking family relationships, spending money on lawyers and doctors, destroying their own reputation, all to get access to why. Our bank account again, her words made me think. Max and Lena had completely revealed their true nature. There was no going back. There was no possibility of a genuine reconciliation. To them, I had never been a mother or respected mother-in-law. I had always just been money on legs. This revelation, although painful, was also liberating. I no longer had to wonder if I was making the right decision. I no longer had to feel guilty for protecting myself. They had proven for themselves that my emotional and physical well-being was less important to them than my money. That evening, Alina came to visit with a surprise. She had invited her friends from the garden club to meet me. Renate, she introduced me. These are my friends Cynthia, who you already know from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We have all been through similar situations with abusive family members. We spent the evening sharing stories. Maria had had to set boundaries with a brother who constantly asked her for money. Carmen had cut off her relationship with a daughter who only visited when she needed money. Alfreda had had to change her will after she found out her grandchildren considered her their retirement plan. What hurts me the most, I confessed, is not losing the money I gave them, but realizing that I never had the love I thought I had. Renate, Alfreda said with the wisdom of her 80 years, true love cannot be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never real. Her words were balm for my wounded soul. She was right. I had bought attention, not love. I had financed an illusion. You know what I've discovered? I said to my new friends that loneliness surrounded by people who don't love you is worse than being lonely on your own. At least now when I am alone, I am in good company. Everyone laughed and we toasted to our newfound wisdom. That night after my new friends had left, I sat in my garden thinking. The stars shone brighter than ever, or perhaps I was seeing them with clearer eyes. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely alone financially. I had no dependents, no financial obligations to anyone but myself. And instead of scaring me, this reality excited me. I could travel when I wanted. I could remodel my house. I could buy myself nice clothes. I could donate to charities that were important to me. I could invest in my own future instead of financing the present of ungrateful people. Freedom tasted like hope, and for the first time in years I wanted to plan my future. A month after the psychiatrist's visit, I thought I had finally won the war. I had settled into a beautiful routine. I calmly had breakfast and read the newspaper. I tended to my garden, had lunch with Alina or one of my new friends. And in the afternoons, I devoted myself to activities I had given up for years. I had started painting again, something I was passionate about before I became Max and Lena's personal financier. But on a Thursday morning while I was painting flowers on my new easel, Mr. Weber came to my house with a grim expression that made my blood run cold. "Renati, we need to talk. Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They are requesting to have a legal guardian assigned to you." The words fell on me like stones. I knew it was a possibility, but hearing it out loud made it terrifyingly real. Does that mean they can take control of my money? If a judge determines that you are unable to manage your affairs, yes, he could place Max as your legal guardian, which would give him full control over your finances. I sat down heavily on my sofa, feeling the weight of the deepest betrayal I had experienced in my life. My own son was trying to legally declare me incompetent to steal my money. Mr. Weber, what evidence could they have? You yourself have seen that I am completely competent. They have statements from 3 witnesses who claim you have behaved erratically. They also submitted unpaid doctor's bills that you supposedly didn't pay and medications that you supposedly hoarded without taking them. But that's a lie. I don't have any outstanding doctor's bills or hoarded medications. I know, Renate, but they have fabricated convincing evidence. They also have the statement from Dr. Lehman, who states that you refused to cooperate with a psychiatric evaluation, which they interpret as proof of mental decline. The manipulation was diabolical. They had turned my refusal to undergo an unnecessary exam into proof of a mental illness. They had used my instinct to protect myself from them as proof that I needed protection. Who are the 3 witnesses? Mr. Weber looked through his documents. Lena, of course, a neighbor named Mr. Davis, and someone who claims to be your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Mr. Davis was the neighbor across the street, an unpleasant man who had always had problems with me because my friends sometimes parked in front of his house. Mr. Green was indeed my pharmacist, but I didn't understand what he could have against me. "I need to talk to Mr. Green," I told Mr. Weber. "Something's not right." We went to the pharmacy together that afternoon. Mr. Green received me surprised and nervous. "Mrs. Richter, it's good to see you. How are you, Mr. Green? I was told you signed a statement saying I show erratic behavior with my medications." His face turned red as a tomato. "Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago and asked about your medications. She said she was worried because you were acting strangely." "And what did you tell her?" "I explained to her that you only buy vitamins and occasional aspirin, that you don't have any regular medical prescriptions, but she insisted that this was proof that you weren't taking adequate care of your health." Mr. Weber interjected. "Mr. Green, did you sign a paper?" She brought a document that said I was confirming that Mrs. Richter had irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for her health insurance or something. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. My own pharmacist had been tricked into signing something he didn't fully understand. Lena's manipulation knew no bounds. "Mr. Green," I said, "I need you to write a statement explaining exactly what happened and clarifying that I have no problems with medications. Of course, Mrs. Richter, I am terribly sorry for this misunderstanding." After the pharmacy, we went to confront Mr. Davis. When we knocked on his door, he received us with obvious hostility. "What do you want, Mr. Davis?" Mr. Weber said, "I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior." "And you're right, I did. That woman is crazy. She's been acting strange for weeks." "Can you be more specific about the behaviors you observed?" "Installing cameras as if she lived in a war zone, having strangers visit all the time, yelling at her family in the street." I realized Mr. Davis had taken everything out of context. The cameras had been installed for protection. The strangers were my new friends. The yelling was me defending my house from Max and Lena's invasions. "Mr. Davis," I said, "do you know why I installed the cameras?" "No, and I don't care. To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law who broke into my house without permission and threatened me." "That's what a crazy person would say," he replied, cry. There was no way to reason with him. His statement was based on superficial observations maliciously interpreted. That evening, Mr. Weber and I sat down to plan our defense. "Renati, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who is an expert in assessing mental capacity. She can officially confirm that you are completely competent. What if Max and Lena have bribed the judge? What if none of this matters because they have already decided to declare me incompetent?" "Renate, the legal system is not perfect, but it's not completely corrupt either. We have solid evidence of your mental competence and their financial motivations. We are going to fight this." The next day I went to my appointment with Dr. Moore. She was a woman in her 50s with kind but astute eyes. "Mrs. Richter, I'm going to ask you a series of questions and tests to assess your mental capacity. Take your time and answer honestly." For 2 hours, she asked me questions about my memory, my reasoning ability, my financial understanding, my emotional health. She also gave me cognitive tests and asked me to solve mathematical and logical problems. "Mrs. Richter," she said at the end, "your results are well above average for your age. You are not only mentally competent, but your cognitive function is excellent. Doctor, why do you think my family is doing this? Based on what you've told me and the documents I've reviewed, this seems to be a classic case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it's more common than people think." I left the consultation feeling validated, but also sad. The professional confirmation of my mental health was a relief, but it also confirmed that the lawsuit was real and necessary. That afternoon, Elena organized an emergency meeting with all our friends from the garden club. When I told them about the incompetence lawsuit, everyone was outraged. Renate, Maria said, we will testify in your favor. We have been with you for weeks and anyone can see that you are doing great. Better than great, Cynthia added. You are clearer and stronger than many 40-year-old women I know. Alfreda with her 80-year-old wisdom took my hands. Renate, my dear, what your children are doing is nothing new. For generations, greedy children have tried to declare their parents insane to get their money. But you have something many of these victims didn't have: documentation, legal support, and friends who can testify for you. Her words gave me hope. I was not alone in this fight. I had an army of strong women who had witnessed my transformation firsthand. You know what the saddest thing about all this is? I said that Max and Lena are willing to destroy any future possibility of reconciliation for money. Even if I were willing to forgive everything so far, there's no going back from this. And maybe that's for the best, Cynthia replied. At least now you know exactly who they are and you can act accordingly. That night, for the first time since this nightmare began, I really cried, not out of sadness, but out of grief. I said my final goodbye to the son I thought I had, to the dream of a loving family, to the illusion that unconditional love was reciprocated. But something new also emerged within me. An iron determination not to let myself be stripped not only of my money but also of my dignity and my freedom. The war had officially begun, but I was ready to fight. The trial came 3 weeks later. I woke up early, put on my best black suit, and looked at myself in the mirror with a determination I had never felt before. Today, not only my mental capacity would be judged, my dignity as a person, my right to live free from abuse, my value beyond my bank account would be judged. Mr. Weber came at 7 in the morning to go over our strategy one last time. Renate, remember, the burden of proof is on them. They have to prove that you are incompetent. We just have to show that you are not. And what if the judge is already biased? Judge Miller has a reputation for being fair. I researched his past cases and he doesn't automatically favor families. He is dedicated to protecting the rights of the elderly. We arrived at the courthouse at 9:00 in the morning. In the hallway, I saw Max in a new suit that he probably bought for the occasion and Lena dressed in black as if she were at a funeral. Maybe it was the funeral of our family relationship. When our eyes met, Max avoided my gaze, but Lena held my gaze with a coldness that confirmed that for her, this was just a business transaction. Their lawyer was an older, elegant man with the kind of confidence that comes from winning similar cases before. When he began his opening statement, his strategy was clear: to portray me as a confused old woman who had been manipulated by strangers to alienate me from my loving family. Your Honor, he said in a solemn voice, Mrs. Renate Richter has shown a clear mental decline in recent months. She has cut off all financial support for her family without a rational explanation. She has installed unnecessary security systems due to paranoia and has isolated herself from her loved ones under the influence of neighbors and lawyers who are obviously taking advantage of her vulnerable situation. Every word had been carefully chosen to make my self-empowerment sound like dementia and my freedom sound like external manipulation. Then they called their witnesses. Lena was the first to testify and her performance was Oscar-worthy. She cried as she described how I had completely changed, how I had become hostile and paranoid, how I had isolated myself from the family that loved me. Your Honor, she said in a trembling voice, Renate has always been like a second mom to me. Seeing her mental decline has been devastating. We just want to help her get the care she needs. Lies wrapped in convincing tears. When Mr. Weber cross-examined her, the cracks in her story began to become visible. Mrs. Schuster, can you tell the court when was the last time you called my client without asking for money? Lena stammered. Well, we always talked about many things. Can you give me a specific date? I don't remember exact dates. Is it true that you and your husband got married without inviting my client? It was a very small ceremony. Is it true that when my client asked about the wedding, you told her that you had only invited special people? Lena's face turned red. Those words were taken out of context. What would be the right context to tell your mother-in-law that she is not a special person? She couldn't answer convincingly. Max was next. Seeing him on the witness stand, swearing to tell the truth while preparing to lie about my mental health was one of the most painful moments of my life. This was the boy I had raised alone, the one I had dedicated my entire life to. My mom has always been very generous with us, he testified. But lately she has become erratic and irrational. We believe she is being manipulated by people who are taking advantage of her. When Mr. Weber cross-examined him, the mask fell completely. Mr. Richter, how much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years? I don't know the exact amount. Does $33,400 sound about right? Maybe she's always been generous. And how many times have you visited your mother without asking her for money? The silence was deafening. Is it true that you and your wife broke into my client's house without permission and checked her private documents? We were worried about her. Is it true that you brought a lawyer to pressure her into signing a power of attorney? We wanted to help her manage her finances. Do you at 35 years old need the help of your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent? Max couldn't answer with dignity. Mr. Davis testified about my supposed erratic behaviors, but when Mr. Weber asked him for details, he admitted that he had never spoken to me directly and that all his information was based on superficial observations. Dr. Lehman testified that my refusal to undergo an evaluation was proof of mental decline. But Mr. Weber submitted the documentation of our evaluation with Dr. Moore, which completely refuted his conclusions. Then it was our turn. Mr. Weber first called Mr. Green, my pharmacist, who explained how he had been tricked into signing a statement that distorted my medication buying habits. Dr. Moore testified about my excellent mental state and presented the results of the cognitive tests, which had been flawless. Mr. Summer from the hardware store testified about my mental competence and explained that my decisions to cancel automatic transfers were completely rational and had been processed correctly. The Leaner and my friends from the garden club testified about my clarity, my newfound vitality, and my ability to maintain healthy social relationships. Finally, it was my turn to testify. I stood up with dignity and walked to the witness stand, feeling the weight of 71 years of experience, of wisdom gained through pain, of strength discovered in adversity. Mr. Weber guided me through my testimony, letting me tell my whole story. The $33,400 spent in 3 years. The humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the constant emotional manipulation, the violation of my privacy, the legal threats. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Weber finally asked, "Why did you decide to stop financial support for your son and daughter-in-law?" "Because I finally understood that what I was getting from them was not love," I replied in a clear, loud voice. "It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome, but I as a person was not. Do you regret your decision? I only regret that it took me so long to make it." Max's lawyer tried to make me appear confused during his cross-examination, but I answered every one of his questions with clarity and precision. When he tried to imply that my new friendships had manipulated me, I explained to him that for the first time in years I had relationships based on mutual respect and not on financial interest. In his closing argument, Max's lawyer insisted that I was a victim of external manipulation. Mr. Weber's rebuttal was devastating. "Your Honor, what we have seen here is not the case of an incompetent old woman, but that of a woman who has finally found the strength to free herself from years of financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented no real medical evidence of mental incompetence. What they have presented is frustration because their source of income has decided to exercise her legal and moral right to protect her own resources." Judge Miller retired to deliberate for 2 hours that felt like 2 years. When he came back, his expression was serious but clear. After reviewing all the evidence presented, he began, "It is obvious to this court that Mrs. Renate Richter is in full possession of her mental faculties. Professional psychiatric evaluations confirm her cognitive competence. Her financial decisions, as painful as they may be for her family, are completely rational and within her rights." My heart began to beat faster. Furthermore, the judge continued, "The evidence suggests that this lawsuit is motivated by financial interest rather than by genuine concern for Mrs. Richter's well-being. The court completely denies the request for guardianship. I had won. I had not only won the lawsuit, but also my freedom, my dignity, my right to live free from the abuse of those who supposedly loved me." When we left the courthouse, I saw Max and Lena talking angrily with their lawyer. Lena gave me a look of pure hatred before she walked away. Max looked at me one last time, and for a second I saw something that could have been regret, but it was already too late. That night, Eleanor organized a celebration at my house with all our friends. We toasted to justice, to freedom, to the sisterhood of strong women who support each other. "Renata," Alfreda told me, "today you didn't just win a trial, you won back your life." She was right. For the first time in years, the future was completely mine. I could travel, I could love, I could create, I could live without fear, without guilt, without manipulation. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful apartment near the city center. I donated half of my money to organizations that protect the elderly from family abuse. With the other half, I began to live the life I had always wanted. I traveled through Europe, took art classes, and joined volunteer groups. I never heard from Max and Lena again. I heard from others that they had to move to a smaller apartment and that Lena had found a job for the first time in years. Perhaps the adversity would teach them what my generosity never could: the value of honest work and independence. Some nights when I look at the stars from my new balcony, I think about the woman I was a year ago, fearful, manipulated, believing I had to buy love. That woman is dead, and in her place someone has been born who has understood a fundamental truth. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Renati. I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. If you liked my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what you all think, and also write me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you with heartfelt greetings. Until next time.